Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me first of all thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us this opportunity to be together. And also to thank Professor Osman Bakar and friends in ISTAC for giving me this honor to officiate this particular function. The content of this book that is so precious and so important for us to move forward.
Dzulkifli Abdul Razak, the Rector of International Islamic University, IIUM, our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of ISTAC, IIUM, I would like to welcome all of you to this half-day event. It all began with a very small idea, actually. Well, it's just small but big, actually. We wanted to launch this book authored by my good friend, Michel Farah Kimball, an ardent fan of peace studies, and of course, someone who knows very well this Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba of Senegal. The book appears to us as very significant to our efforts to create peace studies, conflict and peace studies. The book is significant to that. And we were in the process of establishing a new field of study at the level of unit here, because we are now restructuring ISTAC under the various niche areas. So one of these niche areas is comparative religion and intercultural dialogue. So what a good start that we can have through launching of this book.
We would like to talk today about Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, who's a religious leader who produced a prodigious quantity of poems and tracts on mediation, rituals, work, and Quranic study. He led a pacifist struggle against the French colonial empire while not waging outright war on the French like several others had done. We would be starting with our forum for today that is going to be about the book title Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, A Peacemaker for Our Time by Farah Kimball. This would be chaired by Associate Professor Dr. Daniel Muhammad Yusuf, the Deputy Dean of Academic and Research Unit at ISTAC.
Today, we shall discuss the book Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, A Peacemaker for Our Time. And it's a pertinent time to discuss this book. As I woke up this morning, there was news of a bombing in Mindanao, yes, of a Roman Catholic church, where 20 died and 81 were injured. And it's especially important that we discuss a figure such as Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba because of his non-violent resistance approach, which is a rarity in the Muslim world, especially in light of the dominance of such negative spotlight that has been given to extremist or terrorist organizations such as ISIS. Especially this is also pertinent because of the fear of foreign fighter returns. Yeah? The foreign fighters returning from the Middle East as ISIS begins to crumble there. So there's a legitimate fear of it coming to this region. And part of that fear was in a way highlighted as to what happened yesterday or today in the news. For this discussion today, I will, of course, first introduce or present or allow the author, Michel Farah Kimball, to do a presentation, a 15 minutes presentation, more or less, of the book before we go to the respondents from ISTAC, yeah, Prof. Kamar, Oniah, Kamarusaman, as well as Dr. Emeritus. Before that, allow me to read a bit from the sleeve of the book by way of introducing Michel Farah Kimball. The author received her Bachelor of Arts from the University of California at Santa Cruz with honors. She pursued graduate studies in Near Eastern Studies at University California, Berkeley, and received her MA from Santa Barbara. She compiled the book Muslim Women Throughout the World and annotated bibliography and has written articles on Rumi, Sohrawardi, Islamic spirituality, and women in Islam. Kimball founded the International Peace Project, and in the 1990s, she took up the cause of the plight of the Iraqi people, especially children, suffering under sanctions and bombardment. She made an aid trip there with 80 others to show support and deliver medicines while risking imprisonment. Kimball wrote articles about her experiences, including Let the Children Live, and made media appearances, gave lectures, and organized many events focusing on global peace initiatives. Kimball also lectured at interfaith gatherings with fellow Christian, Jewish, Hindu, and Buddhist colleagues, and hosted Chaldean Catholic Archbishop Gabriel Kasab and organized events to support his work in Iraq. She is one of the first signatories to A Common Word Between Us and You, an open letter by Islamic scholars to Christian leaders calling for peace and understanding. She also produced a CD of mystical chants dedicated to world peace. While committed to working for peace, she hosted Senegalese president candidate Sheikh Abdoulaye, who introduced her to the work of Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba. So this, I invite the author, Michelle Farah Kimball, to present her book.
This is Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba. He was born in 1854 and died in 1927. But to this day, you see his image all over Senegal in West Africa, on walls and buses and on trees, and photocopies are put on shops. And he's a living presence. Even though, you know, he died in 1927, he had a tremendous impact on the country of Senegal and its people. There are mystical and magical stories that abound about him and what he did. So why is he still important today? Well, just to give a brief introduction, I came to know about Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba through this man, Sheikh Abdoulaye, who was a follower of the teachings of Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba. But he was also a member of parliament in Senegal. His son now is a member of parliament. And he happened to be running for president of Senegal when I met him. And he was globe-trotting around the world, speaking at the United Nations and World Conference of Religions and other places, and often about global peace. I was heavily involved in peace activism at the time, and he was also speaking a lot about peace around the world. And I had just come back from war-torn Iraq, as you mentioned, on a peace humanitarian aid mission. So when he related to me the story of Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, this Muslim Gandhi type figure who lived in a time of foreign domination, invasion, and oppression, much like we see in war-ravaged countries today that are reeling from violence. But the thing is, he was totally dedicated to bringing peace through and social change through nonviolence. And Sheikh Abdoulaye told me much more, but it seemed an amazing story that people needed to know about. So as a peace activist, I thought I should let people know about this figure. And I began gathering information. So Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba had a philosophy, much like Gandhi and Martin Luther King, regarding the power of nonviolence. He was also a great literary luminary as well. And like them, Bamba was imprisoned, and he was not in the favor of the governing powers that be. And like them, he was religiously and spiritually inspired, each of them from a different religious tradition. But Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba believed that the greatest battle was with one's self, with one's own soul. And he taught the importance of seeking, knowing, and standing up for the truth. Not in a confrontational kind of way, but by living that truth. Now, around the time that Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba was born in 1854, slavery was supposedly ending, but the psychological scars of this still ran deep as millions of people had been extracted from Africa. And so now, as wounds were still healing, the French colonialists, led by, early on by this man, Louis Faidherbe, were infiltrating to pacify Senegal. And not only Senegal, but with a plan to dominate Africa from the west coast, where Senegal is, to the east coast, to gain control of valuable resources and to avoid taxes, but also they wanted to benefit African people by introducing French culture through their civilizing mission. So they introduced the French language and French schools, and they diminished the number of Islamic and native schools. So they hoped to transform Africans into French men and women, even giving citizenship to some people, French citizenship, that is. And, but obviously, there was resistance to this kind of foreign encroachment. And there ensued many battles, not just by Muslim jihadists, but also traditional African chiefs. So Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba was not from a family of warriors, but he was from a family of educators. And he devoted his life to gaining religious and spiritual knowledge at the feet of sages, some of whom were his own family members, because he came from a family of scholars. But he witnessed the battles of resistance against the French colonialists, the killings and the bloodshed, and members of his own family were kidnapped and killed. His own sister, at the age of 9, was kidnapped and sold into slavery. These horrific events continued while he attempted to pursue his studies. As he grew older and gained more knowledge, and when I say older, well, he was quite young at when these big battles were beginning, but even in his early 20s, he had started to write booklets and became quite popular. So he often versified texts of the classical Islamic texts and versified them into beautiful poetry that people would chant to know better. And he became so popular in sharing this knowledge that crowds of people came to learn from him. Over time, he developed a system of education in which he incorporated spiritual purification according to the concept of ihsan or tasawwuf in traditional Islamic studies. Now, he also included all the other aspects of Islamic studies, but ihsan was particularly important, that he wanted people to actually incorporate this into the whole educational system which he created. And ihsan, as you know, is to beautify the soul. And that through guidance, through religious and spiritual practice and guidance. So Bamba had a great effect, but he never set out to resist the French colonialists, but he did not physically oppose the French in what they were doing, but he peacefully sought to educate people. he and his representatives established schools and mosques. In every little town that they would go to, they would establish a school and a mosque. And crowds came to them to learn, because Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba exuded wisdom. And, but with the amount of people that were coming to visit him, the French became very suspicious, because they couldn't tell the difference between people gathering around a wise man or people gathering around to perhaps create an army to fight them. So they were already fighting and killing whatever opposition came to them, and they had the military might to stop the opposition. And there were raging battles of Maba, Jahuba, Lat Dior, and others. But Bamba was principled in his stance, and he was not subservient to the French in any way. But to the French people, it was an affront to them that Bamba, Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, declared that he recognized one God as the ultimate authority when they viewed themselves in the role of the highest authority of the land. So, in fact, the French posted the following telegram back to France from Senegal. Urgent, Ahmadou Bamba is making it known that he recognizes no other master but God and refuses to be summoned for an interview. Situation particularly grave. Now, that was a very serious statement by the French at the time. So the French decided to keep Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba in their radar. They surveilled him. And when they learned he went on retreats outside of their area of control, they became very suspicious. Now, in his retreats, he was deeply inspired, not to go and fight the French, but to set out to find a sacred city, a blessed sanctuary for which he said he had permission from God to establish on earth. And he set out into the wilderness alone, inhabited apparently by lions and hyenas and panthers, in search of the divine light of this sacred city, which did not yet exist on earth. Now, he was to name this city Tuba. And Tuba means blessedness or happiness. And it's mentioned just one time in the Quran. Alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati tuba lahum wa husnu ma'ab. Those who attain to faith and righteous deeds are destined for tuba, that is happiness, blessedness, in this world, and a beautiful place of final return. Now, when the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, would be reciting the Quran various times, people would say, "What is Tuba?" Because this is this very special place that people who do good deeds and who have faith will go to. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, answered, "Tuba is a tree that is in paradise. The extent of its shade is equal to a 100-year walk, and the clothes of heaven's inhabitants originate from its flowers." So Bamba was making a connection between the divine Tuba, the transcendent spiritual Tuba, which is promised to people who do good, and the horizontal plane of the earth. And he was establishing this potential connection. And he was able to discover the location of Tuba. in his roamings in the desert, in the savannah, excuse me. He had dreams with flashes of light when he was near the place, and he found a baobab tree in the location where Touba would be. And according to oral history, he established a mosque in the baobab tree, first provisional mosque of Touba. As he continued to gain popularity, many of the village chiefs became exceedingly jealous of him, not just them, but other people too, members of his family even. The chiefs began to kind of side with the French regarding this troublemaker, Ahmadou Bamba, and they slandered Ahmadou Bamba, and they said that Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba was dangerous, and he had weapons, and he was planning a militant uprising against the French, which was not true, because Ahmadou Bamba already was very peaceful and dedicated to nonviolence. So in 1895, the French decided they didn't want to deal with this man anymore. They decided to come and arrest Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba. So escorted by 200 soldiers and cavalry on horses, they came and they forced Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba from his peaceful home. And for all anyone knows, he could have been being taken to his death, because the French usually would not allow people to live who were in opposition to them. But in that moment, when Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba was taken by the soldiers, he felt he was divinely protected. In fact, he desired to reach the high spiritual stature of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, who faced their oppressors at the Battle of Badr, B-A-D-R, where the believers were outnumbered 3-1, and apparently by divine intervention, they prevailed. But he wrote beautiful poems in honor of these companions, who must have had exceeding courage, high level of courage in order to be able to do what they did, to be willing to go out and die for the truth. His exquisite poetry, what Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba writes, is really quite beautiful to listen to. It's mesmerizing, and it's not like other Muslim music you've probably heard, Arabic or other Muslim music. It's got a distinct African cadence and rhythm to it. So Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba's prayer to achieve nearness in rank, in spiritual rank, with the companions was fulfilled as he wrote about that moment of being escorted away by these soldiers to prison. So he writes, "I was walking with the truthful when I walked into exile. I was with the righteous people of Badr, while my persecutors were confident I was in their presence. He knew that he was not a prisoner of the French, colonialists, inwardly, that he knew he was going to something that may be treacherous, but that which would bring him closer to God." So he was escorted to court for a hearing, and he was there for several hours, and the authorities came to the conclusion that he was menacing, troubling, and disturbing the tranquility of the region. So they decided to send him so far away he could have no influence in Senegal anymore. And perhaps they were, again, sending him to his own death for all anyone knew. Reminiscent of people sent off on slave ships, never to return again. They put him in chains, like they used to do with the slaves, and exiled him and shipped him off on an old Portuguese ship to where he didn't know where he was going. Even on the ship, he didn't know where he was going, nor did his followers know where he was going. This is a painting done much later showing the angels supporting him and depicting a story of him praying on the water. So he was sent to the French Congo, Gabon, 3,000 miles away from Senegal. Now that's a tremendous distance, especially back then in 1895. So who's to think he would come back? And people they had exiled there before, in fact, did not come back alive, such as the Guinean war chief Samori Touré, who died of pneumonia there. So the French expected that that was going to be the end of Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, and he would not survive this trial. So I'm skipping ahead for time, but he managed to stay alive in Gabon for 7 years, suffering trials and tribulations so difficult that he said he wouldn't even write about them. And he resided in solitude and in unsafe conditions without succumbing to famine and fatal endemic diseases that other people had succumbed to there. Nonetheless, he was able to write inspiring poetry while there. So his dedicated followers, when they found out that he was indeed alive and he was there, they solicited to have him released. And after 7 years in the jungles, he was able to return to Senegal with allegedly trunks of writings that he had done. So when he returned to Senegal, there were crowds of people that came around to see who was this man who was able to survive 7 years in the Congo, miraculously, it seemed. And he again began to draw crowds, a lot of crowds of people coming to learn from him. Especially, he had these beautiful poetry of wisdom and songs. So within 6 months of his return to Senegal from Gabon, the French decided to exile him again. Yet this time to a completely different place, and that was to the Sahara Desert in Mauritania. Now, the Sahara Desert was a completely different kind of place because it was known to have amazing spiritual and religious leaders and great scholars of Islam beyond what Senegal had. And Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba decided to go a little bit deeper into the Sahara, and he was inspired with and received the weird or the special prayers and formulas and verses of the Quran specifically for this new spiritual order that he was founding. So this exile for him, whereas the other one was one of trials and tribulations, this exile for him was one of consecration, of his purpose in life. And it was exceptional that here Arabs came in the middle of the desert, came to learn from him, a black man, that they encouraged him they acknowledged him as their spiritual leader. And they did not look favorably on Senegalese because they considered themselves more noble in their religious knowledge. So after several years of being there, once again, people solicited for him to return to Senegal. And he was able to return, and the French, when he came back, the French, again, put him under house arrest. So he was not allowed to, he was only allowed to stay in certain places, and he had to get permission if he wanted to go anywhere or travel anywhere. So he was not allowed to be in his blessed sacred city of Touba, which then was just a little village. This is Touba now, which is a lot different. This was built on the sacred site that Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba had searched for and found in the savannah, and upon which he recited the prayer of Abraham, "O God, make this city a place of peace and serenity." So it was developed and became the second largest city in Senegal, and today it has a population of over 500,000 people with a yearly pilgrimage of millions of people, and it's the biggest pilgrimage in all of Africa for Muslims. And essentially, when the pilgrimage occurs once a year for several days, the entire country is affected because so many people are headed to Touba. So there's traffic jammed up for miles, and people jump on buses and hang from the sides of cars and climb on top, whatever they can to get there. The president and the political leaders and members of spiritual orders travel to honor the sanctity of the place, Touba, and its founder. And even members of other spiritual orders, the Tijaniya, the Qadiriyya, they understand that this was a holy man and that he gave a great gift to the people of Senegal. Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba said he recognized that this city would be a great city. He said, "People will come from the lands and the seas, and I will not cause any harm to them." Essentially, it has happened that people of many walks of life travel to the pilgrimage from other countries, and he's gradually becoming more well known in the United States and other places in the world. Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba and other spiritual leaders of the time in Senegal helped to effect tremendous change without ever picking up weapons. And I'm skipping through a lot, for time, but you can, read the details in the book. So Senegal remains one of the few African nations to have not experienced the great turmoil of other African countries. And Bamba believed that by traversing the spiritual path, according to the precepts of revealed religion, revealed knowledge, one gains discernment of the truth. And by this, people become empowered within and less likely to be subject to foreign domination or any kind of domination. So through his writings and teachings, based on the Islamic and intellectual spiritual tradition, he and other spiritual leaders in Senegal helped bring about a cultural and spiritual revival in spite of the French presence. Is this going to the next one? Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba's philosophy was inspired by the Quran and the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And he came earlier, but his philosophy echoes the conviction of Martin Luther King Jr. and Gandhi regarding the power of nonviolence. Gandhi's approach directly influenced Martin Luther King, who argued that the Gandhian nonviolent philosophy provided the only morally and practically sound method open to oppressed people in their struggle for freedom. So Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba believed that he had a mandate from God to not harm anything. When the French authorities sent a spy disguised as a follower to check on him before he was exiled the first time, And because they had heard he was gathering weapons to foment rebellion, which of course was not true, he intuitively knew the spy's agenda and said, I have agreed to certain conditions with God, such that even if the Mahdi, that is the prophesied end-time redeemer of the world in Islam, who comes back with the Messiah, so he says, even if the Mahdi descends on earth, I would not assist him in battle. I will not kill neither scorpion nor serpent, nor anything that is living. According to the direction I have taken, it is absolutely forbidden for me to shoot from a weapon, such that even if the Mahdi were to arrive, and if I were to take up arms, my mission would be lost. Thank you.